I've got you under my skin. I've got you deep in the heart of me, so deep in my heart that you're really a part of me. I've got you under my skin.
I'm going to talk about the 4 parts of unified self. That's maybe it's a new idea, but it's not really. We have 4 parts to ourself, and I'm calling for the language lessons of the heart. These 4 parts are this. Your head is what we'll call spirit. It's also, you can call it the mind or the ego. So spirit, mind, ego is up here. And then you have your heart, which is this whole area of your body right here. It's where your heart actually exists. And then there's your will. It's down in this area, all the way down. And then you have your whole body, So those are the 4 parts of your unified self. And it sounds easy, but really to try to come to a clear understanding about who you are isn't easy. We struggle with that when we're a kid. How do you be? Who are you? And who do you act like? And what it is to be me? And those kind of things. And nobody really says, well, look, you got this going on and that going on. The thing about these 4 parts of yourself is they can act independently. In other words, you can be in your heart at times. You can be in your emotional body, your will, your soul. That's your will is your soul. You can be in your soul at times, and you can be in your physical body at times. And each time you're in each one of these different states, there's your normal state, which is what I'm talking from now. Then your voice changes. Like when you're in your heart. If you love your dog or you're loving a baby or something, you go, oh baby, or oh sweetie, or your whole voice changes. Or if you're talking pillow talk with your lover and it's like, oh I love you, and that's your whole personality, everything changes because you're in your heart. Or if you're devotion, oh God I love you, it's like a whole different voice and attitude and feeling and everything. And the same goes with your emotional body, with your will, with your soul. If you're upset or angry, then your voice changes. If you're afraid, your voice changes. If you're having emotional turmoil, that shows in your voice. And there's a whole personality going on down there. And then your body has its own, can take over at times. Like if you're really exhausted, your body says, oh, I'm tired. I can't deal with this anymore. I got to rest. Or if you're hungry, it goes, I'm hungry. And then that's the main, that feeling's coming through. Or if you're charged up to go do some exercise, ride your bike, or go to the gym, and the body's all, yeah, I'm going to do this, and it's all pumped up. They call it pumped up. It's your body taking over, and they're body people, and emotional people, will people, heart people, and head people. And like I said, it's not easy because we've never been reflected on, oh, you have a problem with your heart, oh, you have your emotional problem, but you don't realize that they're actually beings, they're people just like you. And so that's what this video is all about, to kind of show you some of the different qualities and aspects of the 4 parts that you are. The understanding of language lessons of heart is that we're polyphrenic. We're multidimensional beings, and we're unstuck in time, and we have this infinite aspect to us too. And what I mean by polyphrenic is, schizophrenic is to have one personality that's split, so you have part of you over here and part of you over that. But polyphrenic means that you have many personalities, many beings that reside within you. And so we have the little talk that you have in your head. That's one being. And if somebody's bothering you, or somebody's praising you. Those are beings that are aspects of yourself that that you can identify. This is important to identify. There's your unified self that you talk with and will act with every day. And then there's these inner flavors or colors of the unified self that can step forward. And each one can have issues, each one can have benefits, each one can have qualities that you need to have working together. Again, it's not easy. It's not easy to have sort of a correct or a useful or a powerful self-image, to know what qualities are doing what, and how things on the outside influences what on the inside. You know, you love something, there's a heart there, and if something clashes with your sensibility or doesn't sound true, the ring of truth is in your belly. So, and yet we kind of form our identity naturally. We look outside and we try to say, well, maybe I should be this or that. It's not easy. And I'll show you this clip it's kind of a funny way of showing it, how hard it is.
Do you want a point? I hope not, because I'm all out of points, but I have a confusion if you have the time. Let me tell you a piece of advice that I got when I was younger. It was be yourself. That sucked. Pee yourself would have been bad too, but be yourself? Never mind the logical absurdity of it, it can be an incredibly anxiety-provoking thing to hear as a teenager, or an adult for that matter. You know what my self was at that time? Scared as shit, lonely, anxious to the point of insomnia? Being that me was not an option. I didn't have the tools to deal with those parts. But if the me I was supposed to be being was something else, then yes, no shit, I'd love to be that. Do you have the rest of the instructions, jackass? At that age, at that time, it was like being in a burning building and being told to relax. It's just not an option sometimes, being those parts of yourself. It's too much, too much. I could not figure out how to fit into this world. I tried so many things.
So people have issues. They can't figure out how to, you have to figure out how to fit in this world. It's not easy. And so what's the instruction manual that he's talking about? This is what this little video is about, is to give you some hints and to start to get you to start to change your ideas about who you are and how you can relate to yourself, which is then how you can relate to the world. Instead of relating to the world from the outside in, when you turn your mind around, you can see that you can relate to the world from the inside out. It's a completely different way of looking and living at your life, with more confidence, less emptiness, and less insecurity, and more knowing. Because once you actually know who these parts of yourself are, and who's doing what, when, what's on automatic, what's not, what memory is this and where's that, life's a lot easier, a lot easier. I'm going to show you some of the fourness of the different parts of ourselves. The idea of four things, four elements and four aspects and four colors and things like that have been around a really long time. So this is the four faces of God, supposedly from Ezekiel. That's been around, it's a couple thousand years old. This is a swastika, which represents one thing with four limbs, and this is a negative and this is a positive imprint, so it shows the positive and negative of the four things, with male and female. That's very old. I think that's Chinese. Here's Hindu, same idea. There's four parts of one thing, four arms of one thing. And of course you have the yin and yang. Yin, this is a good one. Yin is the female, and that's the darkness. And yang is the male, and that's the light. So you have light and darkness, conscious, subconscious, electric, magnetic, right? But in each one of these, in the yin, there's a little yang, and in the yang, there's a little yin. so that this yin can operate independently because it has enough mind stuff to go with the feeling stuff. And the yang, which is your head, has enough feeling stuff feelings to balance out the thought. So thought and feelings, man and woman, light and dark, magnetic and electric. These are the primary polarities of a human being. But they're also people. So you'd have, this is spirit, heart, will, and body. So there's 4 parts. That's probably the most well-known one. Now in your heart, remember this is language lessons of the heart. What do you have? 4 chambers in your heart. The right atrium, the left atrium, the left ventricle, and the right ventricles. There's a 4-ness in your heart. This is important because language lessons are all this stuff is going to end up eventually balancing in your heart. And what do you have here? This is there's 4 lights in the sky. There's the sun, the moon, the planets, and the stars. 4 lights in the sky. The American Indians have the 4 directions and 4 colors. That's very ancient. Here they have it, the Father Sky, Mother Earth. That's the 2 polarities, the light and the dark, the heaven and earth. And the 4 seasons. Here's another, the 4 seasons, winter, autumn, summer, and spring. That, these are natural divisions of one year comes in 4 parts. And here's a Buddha, and the Buddha, Buddha, but what he has on his chest right there is the balance in his heart of the 4 limbs, the 4 aspects, the 4 parts of one unified self. His heart is open. It's all of that is balanced in his heart. Here's another one. This could be Tibet, or this could be, I'm not really sure where this is, India. But there's one God with 4 faces. That's who we are. We're one God with 4 faces in our inner world. Here's another one. This is definitely India, Hindu. And here's a 4-faced God with 4 arms. That's the swastika. That's the 4 personalities acting as one in an enlightened being. And 4 pillars of wellness here. This is mind, soul, heart, and body. That's another kind of a yin-yang symbol. That's, the 4 parts of ourself. That when you get them in balance, everything is in balance. And each one of these is a person. There's a body person, a mind person, a soul person, and a heart person. Soul, the will, the same thing. And the Egyptians had multiple gods, but this was very common to have the female god, and then Isis, Horus, and so on. But it just shows the multiple gods. That was one being inside of you, and it's all based on the polarity of the man and the woman. There's the king and the queen, the pharaoh and his wife, and see how the king is supported by the wife. That's the dynamics that they're trying to say. The heart and the feelings, the man and the woman, they're supposed to be together. And that's the unity. This is it, the yin and yang, the man and the woman, the thought and the feeling, the white race and the black race. Goes into all these things. And then in Buddhism you have the 4 noble truths. Right? So it's like that's their thing, the 4 noble truths. And what are the 4 noble truths? There is a path to ending suffering. So language lessons of the heart is about ending suffering. Remember, it's the end of pain and the return of life, loving life. And the Four Noble Truths are the truth that suffering exists, the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of something. There's like, if you have suffering, it has a cause to it. There's a reason for it. It's not just magic. Then there's the truth of the end of suffering, and that's what Language Lessons of the Heart is all about: how to end suffering and end the pain. And the truth of the path that frees us from suffering. The truth of the path that frees us from suffering. This is very old stuff, but it's all based on four. And here's another way of looking at it. This is your inner family. Your head would be your king, and then your queen would be your emotional body, your will. So there's your mind and will. And then your heart would be the prince. Would be you could call it your child, but the union or the balance between the king, if you think in terms of the kingdom of heaven, the balance between the king and the queen, when they're united and balanced, then the prince, which is heart, the child of the father and the mother is heart, can come into existence and thrives. And that's kind of what we're going for, is the balance between thought and feeling, man and woman. So that's the fourness. That's the fourness of you need to start thinking about the fourness of your inner self, and there's the beings inside of you. You have beings inside of you. If you're hurt, there's somebody that's hurt. So why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about the four parts of the self? Because it's the game of life, and in this game of life, you have a team. And your team has four players on it: spirit, heart, will, and body. And that's your team. And if you don't know that you're even playing a game, and you don't know who the team members are, and you don't know how to win, then just kind of leave everything up to chance and float along in that natural disaster kind of a way. So if there's anything that's important, it's this, that you have these four parts, and they interact with you, and you interact with them continuously, and the internal atmosphere that you have in your life, your whole outlook on life depends on your team mates, how your will is doing, what's going on with your heart, how your body is doing, and the messages, the stuff that you allow in your head, the ideas, the beliefs, the judgments that have in your head. This is how the inner game is played. And if you can play the inner game, then the outer game is simple, because everybody's got the same four parts, and their one part's hurt over here, they're heartless over there, or they're emotionally upset over here. And this is why it's so important. It's the game of life, and this is the team that you have. It's your team, your inner family, your inner kingdom, your inner players. And that's why this is so important. And I'm going to go over it in a few different ways, so that you get it. Okay, the chakra system is very important. I want to go over that because this is ancient, and these guys had it figured out thousands of years ago. Again, this right here, your whole head, these three chakras right here, are what I'm calling spirit. And you can think of it in three ways, like spirit, mind, and ego, or any way you want to look at it. But there's like these three energy centers represent your spirit or your mind, and then your heart. And notice the symbols for here. This triangle here is actually a tetrahedron. That's a tetrahedron. And heart is this whole region here is the heart. Where your lungs and heart are, all the way down your rib cage, that's your whole heart region. When you have a heartache, that whole region hurts. And then here's another triangle, another tetrahedron. And this is the will. And this is the will polarities down here. These three chakras represent the will. So you have three on top, three on the bottom, and the idea is to balance them in the middle. But for language lessons of the heart, these are three beings, three aspects of the same self. Here's another one. You know, they have their colors. You can see these triangles and the double tetrahedron, which is the Jewish star. Another triangle down here, and then a triangle inside of a box. This is really important. This is the root chakra. It's what manifests. So that's part of the manifestation, but it's just also your survival chakra. This is your sex chakra. So these three down here represent the will. That represents the heart. That represents your mind, your spirit, and the whole thing is your body. It's all contained in your body. Your body is your house. Your body is your vehicle. Your body is your companion. When I talk about the three beings beside your mind, your heart, your will, and your body, is they all talk and communicate. There's a communication flow that happens with them. Right here you have your will, and here you have your throat chakra and your mind. And you can see each of these, your crown chakra, your third eye, and your throat chakra. Each of these corresponds to the will polarity, which is down here. This is your root chakra, sex chakra, and your solar plexus, which I'm calling this the will down here. So what goes on in your head affects down here. Goes on in your head affects down here. And then it goes back up. So when I talk about doing emotion release from your will, it comes out this way, through your voice, and your head and your higher self all participate in the emotional release. They participated in a passive way when you got hurt, and they need to participate in an active way in order to turn your situation around. And all this goes on inside the body. So any conflict or any kind of cross signals that happens in here is reflected out to the body. The body ends up having to hold either the balance and the harmony or the disharmony and the dis-ease. And remember when I said that these are, the spirit is a being, heart is a being, and will is a being, and the body is a being. They're separate beings. Well, the Hindus had a more sophisticated, a little bit more complicated way of looking at it. Each one of these chakras for them was a god, was a being, an aspect of self, and they had names. These are the names down here. Muladhara. I can't even pronounce all these names. Ajna, Asastar. There's ways to pronounce those names, but that's not as important as right here. This is the way it goes. You have your right side of your brain, your left side of your brain. So if you look at your right side of your brain, and you look up here, this is the way your energy flows when you breathe, and it goes and when you think, it goes up here, down here, through there, and down to the root chakra. But from the right side of the brain, that's the right side. But from the left side of the brain, it crosses here, your third eye, and goes down here through the heart. Each one of these things goes through the heart and into your emotional center down here. And they're calling this the conscious, collective supraconscious, and that has to do with your future. And your collective subconscious has to do with the past. So you have future and past, conscious, subconscious. And up here you have superego and ego, or spirit and ego and mind. Ideally, that's going to keep you in the present. But then they have this thing right here. It goes right up the middle. that is where your Kundalini goes. That's Kundalini down there. And what they're calling the will, they call the void, I call the will. And the void is actually a pretty good name for it because it is vast. Your emotional body is big, is very, very big. We think of our mind as being the biggest thing, but the emotional body is an ocean. It's the ocean of the subconscious. It's the void of the unknown, it's the void of darkness. But it's the darkness that generates the light. And anybody who knows about Kundalini knows that when you apply pressure to these three chakras down here, apply locks, then the life force energy shoots up all the way to the top, and that's how you have a rise in Kundalini. So the internal balance of these guys is really important. It is in some ways it is a spiritual path. So, and well, there's chakras all over your body, but the main ones are your head, your heart, your will, and your whole body, because that's what you use every day. You don't use your, you don't use your, your throat chakra. You use that when you talk, and you use these chakras up here when you think, and when you have intuition. But these are the main bodies for the game of life. Now I'm going to show you with geometry. You think, how can one person be four people? Well, you're actually just one thing fundamentally, but it's folded in a different way, or just looked at it in a different way. And that's where this previous segment when I was showing you the chakras and how they had, a tetrahedron. I talked about tetrahedron, and there's a double tetrahedron in the heart, which just shows that the two merge, the spirit and will merge together. And then there's another tetrahedron in your belly. This is how it is. There's 4 in 1, and it's pretty simple. It's symbolic because you're really one thing, but you have these 4 different colors, these 4 different flavors, 4 different attributes, 4 different sub-personalities into your one self.
This video will show one way to get tetrahedrons and octahedrons just by starting with the simple cube. To see the new diagonal faces, I'll use the eraser tool and click on each horizontal and vertical edge, leaving only the diagonal faces. These edges are from the original cube, so there should be 12 total edges. The shape that's uncovered is called a stellated octahedron. There's an octahedron in the middle of this shape, and star points extending outward from each octahedron face. Another neat feature of the stellated octahedron is that it's actually comprised of 2 tetrahedrons. I'm painting one tetrahedron red and the second one green. Each tetrahedron is comprised of 4 equilateral triangles, and if you measure the edge lengths, you'll find that they're all the same.
So I showed you the 4-ness of the self: spirit, heart, will, and body. Those are your 4 teammates, or your 4 roommates, your 4 family members internally. I showed you the 4-ness in nature and in history of how the idea of 4 faces of God, 4 faces of deities. I showed you the yin and yang has 4 parts, and it goes way back in history. And then I showed you how chakras, you have these chakra systems, and how the actual energetic, that's a very ancient energetic system, how it's also divided up into actual beings, and how the energy flows around inside of you. And then I talked a little bit about geometry, about where do these symbols come from, what do they mean, how is 4 into 1, and why is it a tetrahedron, or why is it a double tetrahedron, or a stellated octahedron. And that's because this is I just wanted to give you a broader view of just me just saying there's 4 parts to yourself. It's actually connected to an understanding that goes very deep and is very old. I'm going to talk more on another video about the dynamics, the internal dialogue of what goes on between these four parts of the self, and how important it is to realize that your thoughts encapsulate feelings, and that feelings are supposed to respond to thoughts in a very family kind of loving way, and how all that balances out in the heart.